Thanks for joining us on this webinar. My name is Denise McGean. I'm with the Work Department, and we are a consulting firm that is working with the Pontiac Funders Collaborative, which we will talk more about momentarily. I'm joined by my colleague, LaToya.
I'm LaToya Morgan, and I'm with the Work Department as well.
So for this webinar, we will share a little bit about who the Pontiac Funders Collaborative is and what they are doing. We will talk through in detail what each of the capacity building grants are and what's being offered as part of those. And we will then walk through the application itself and show you how to apply for it. We have our contact information at the end of this presentation, so if you have questions, you can contact us. Okay, so the Pontiac Funders Collaborative. So this is a group of foundations based across Southeast Michigan who have each have had some interest in the Pontiac community and have come together to jointly fund some efforts. So they are currently undertaking an engagement process and talking with leaders across the community about what those investments might look like, but are starting right now with this capacity building program. So this is just a list of what foundations are involved right now. You can keep up to date with their work at the Community Foundation's website. If you go to the Pontiac Initiative page that's on the website and sign up for their e-blasts. That's a great place to go and find out more information as it comes out. So the capacity building grant program, which you have all gotten some basic information about and should have received the guidelines, which is why you're now receiving this webinar. We're going to go through them in detail, as I mentioned, but first just wanted to kind of set the stage by explaining what we mean by capacity building. I'll say that it is meant to be interpreted broadly, but is really about how we're strengthening the people, the tools, the resources that help organizations fulfill their missions now and set them up for sustainability in the future. What it doesn't do, and what these grants are not intended to support, are programming, are activities that your organization might do as part of its mission. It's really about helping to build up the internal infrastructure of the organization and the skill sets of its staff and the people involved. So what you would have read in the guidelines is that there are two separate grant opportunities. The first, professional development for Pontiac leaders, which we are affectionately calling the leader grants. You'll hear us refer to it as that. Provides support for individuals who work in civic organizations such as the school system, the city government, the library, and others like that. Nonprofits who are based in Pontiac, and community organizations more broadly, those who have community-focused missions but may not be 501c3s. And the grants will support those individuals to participate in professional development activities. We'll talk a lot more in the next few slides about what that can look like. The second grant is a technical assistance for Pontiac organizations, which you'll hear us refer to as the organizations grant. This supports small and mid-sized nonprofits who are seeking to improve their capacity. It includes an online assessment tool, which is followed by some coaching around the outcomes of that assessment and a $10,000 grant for technical assistance that's informed by that assessment. So again, we're going to talk through these in more detail, and I'm going to hand it off to LaToya to walk through what these look like.
So the professional development grants for Pontiac leaders, or the Pontiac Leaders Grants, are for individuals involved with government, nonprofits, and community organizations, as we described before. These grants are in a range of $2,500 to $5,000, and a big umbrella can be used under for trainings, conferences, certification, or coaching. We don't really prescribe what those professional development training tracks could look for, but in general, they fall into these large areas. The grant can cover transportation and lodging as well, and the applicants are really left to define what their professional development training looks like. We also do not define what leaders are, because we really expect the grantees and the applicants to think about what that means for themselves within their organization and within their communities. So we leave that to organizations to decide who in their organization could be future leaders or emerging leaders, or who are current leaders, and what that means for you and your work. This professional development track for Pontiac leaders will award 10 grants to folks across the community. The professional development grants, looking at who is eligible. Organizations that are 501c3s or government or institutions, but if you do not have your 501c3, you can partner with an organization for a fiscal sponsorship. We have identified 2 organizations in the community that can serve as fiscal sponsors, the first being OLSA of Oakland County and a Lighthouse of Oakland County. If you're already working with another organization who can provide, who is your fiscal sponsor, that is okay as well. They just need to have a set of audited financial statements. The nonprofits who are eligible for this grant must have budgets that are under $1.5 million and must be headquartered in the city of Pontiac. Here, we're going to talk about some examples of where we have worked, the Community Foundation has worked with the community around leadership grants and community professional development opportunities. The first is with example of S.B. Thomas and her Good Grief Detroit project and professional development. She worked with she used her leadership development training dollars to become a certified grief recovery specialist to support women in her community and herself who are dealing with grief. She used this grant over 3 years to develop her training in this space, and this is totally defined by her interest in serving and supporting her community. Another example is the Belle Isle Conservancy, who took their staff and board to view Central Park Conservancy in New York to learn about operations and revenue strategies. They, as a large public park in the city of Detroit, went to look at another large public park to see how their operations and revenue strategies worked, and they used the funds to support their board and their staff. The Greening of Detroit sought professional development dollars to support their leadership team in learning how to new management techniques for equine therapy. The Greening of Detroit is an organization in Detroit that is focused on land and land use, and they were designed or started to plant trees across the city. So they use their development dollars to help support the learning of their leadership team. And finally, we have an organization called Southwest Solutions, which is based in Southwest Detroit, and they are an affordable housing provider. They use professional development dollars and leadership training dollars to support the training of their head custodian so that he or she would be able to maintain their HVAC system. This allowed them to improve the knowledge of their HVAC or of their custodian, while also saving them money in terms of not having to contract out for service when the HVAC system went down. So these are just a wide range of opportunities that folks have used for professional development dollars, and it's totally defined by the organization and not prescribed through the program. So the application is fairly straightforward. And applicants must just show that the training will improve their job functions and service delivery and allow the individual to create new resources and support for the Pontiac community. The applicants will be able to reapply as long as they are in compliance with their grants for up to 3 years during the term of the Pontiac initiative. And so the application has about some basic information that asks questions about who will benefit from the grant. So if it is a focus towards the board and the staff, you would list out the name of the staff and the board who would benefit from the grant. But if it's just you yourself, you would list out your name and your title and your organization. And you would provide and discuss how the training would improve your work. So you have 3 narrative questions and explain how your work contributes to the future of the Pontiac community. What do you hope to learn from the training? And explain how the training will enhance your organization's capacity. And these are just the 3 narrative questions that we would ask. So it's a pretty straightforward application, and there is opportunity that we'll discuss later to get support in developing those narratives. The attachments. So the professional development grants will have some attachments, but if you are working with a fiscal sponsor, some of those attachments are optional or can be provided by the fiscal sponsor. So a letter from your supervisor approving the project. So if you are the CEO or executive director of your organization and you are seeking to apply for the leader grants, an example of your supervisor would be your board chair or your board's vice chair. The Internal Revenue Service federal exemption letter, your 501c3 letter, your list of board directors or trustees, an optional annual report. So here we don't want you to create an annual report if you don't already have one, but if you do have one, it's an optional addition. The organization's diversity policy, your certified financial audit review, and if you are a fiscally sponsored organization, then it would mean your audit review for your fiscal sponsor. Your operating budget for your current fiscal year for your organization, and the proposed budget that you for your training opportunity, including transportation and lodging. And then here's the final part that would, around compliance. The grant would require that any grantees would have to complete a short narrative about your training experience and how the funds were utilized to benefit you and the community. So that would be part of staying in compliance in order to be able to apply in future years for the grant. So this would be your final report that would be due at the end of the grant year. So here we're talking about the technical assistance grants for Pontiac organizations. It is a simple application, and 10 organizations will be selected. And if you are selected, those 10 organizations will go through the process that I'm going to describe in future slides. Technical assistance for Pontiac organizations. This is the second track for the Pontiac Leader Capacity Grants applications. And this is geared towards organizations, and we will talk more about what technical assistance looks like in future slides. And so this grant application begins with an online assessment to determine what aspects of your organizations are strong and where are opportunities for growth. Based on your assessment, you will be successful grantees will receive a $10,000 grant from the Community Foundation or from the Pontiac Leaders Collaborative. From the Pontiac Leaders,
the Pontiac Funders Collaborative.
Pontiac Funders Collaborative for technical assistance. And so in this grant application for organizations, we are working with 3 partners to help us support this work. The Michigan Nonprofit Association, which we sometimes refer to as M&A, and they will work with you around pre-assessment and coaching. They will also work with you around the understanding the assessment tool and what it provides and what it's trying to understand, as well as post-assessment coaching and the development of a work plan. Michigan Community Resources will be your TA provider and connection and help connect you to or identify TA providers, as well as a touchstone and support for coaching and guidance. COAC Detroit is a regional convener, and they helped connect M&A and MCR, Michigan Community Resources, to this project. So in the pre-assessment, once you are identified as a grantee, there is a pre-assessment phase, and someone from the Michigan Nonprofit Association, M&A, will connect with you to introduce to you the assessment and to work with you on help you understand what the assessment is trying to do. This will be your first introduction. They will talk to you about what the assessment is reviewing, how to approach it, but they also want to let you know, help you to think about how do you organize your staff to be prepared to do something like this. The second step is the assessment, and the assessment you will take online. The questionnaire is estimated to take about actually an hour and a half. And so we just want to let you know, an hour and a half, you should carve that time out and have and let you know a couple things. One, it's the assessment does not let you stop or save, so you have to be ready to complete the assessment in the time that you have allotted. It could take up to 3 hours, but it usually takes about an hour and a half. It's about 290 questions. And so we try to tell you, don't be scared. It's just asking you, feel free to answer the questions truthfully and honestly, because all of the answers are kept confidential. And then once you've completed it, then M&A will meet with you again to review your assessment and to help you to develop a work plan that you will then send to the community foundation. After the community foundation receives your work plan, that is when you will receive your funding for your TA support. Once the funds are awarded from the community foundation, MCR will work with you around coaching and guidance and helping you to identify TA providers if you have not already identified some on your own. So as we said before, the online assessment, it covers about 11 topics, which we will outline in the next slide. It's about 290 questions, and it takes about an hour and a half to complete. So the assessment covers 11 areas: civic engagement and public policy, financial management, fundraising, governance, human resources, information technology, leadership and organizational culture, planning, strategic alliances, transparency, and volunteer management. We understand that you may not have all of these spaces within your organization or all of these functions, but it's okay. Don't feel overwhelmed. Answer them all to the best of your ability. Many of the sections here, if you have a question or are unclear about what it means, it does include a pop-up video that does provide explanation and will help you to answer the question to your best of your ability. If you do have roles in your organization of people who carry out these functions, it would be best that you bring those folks with you when you get ready to do the assessment so that they'll be able to help you answer the questions best. And as we said, the answers are kept confidential, and so they will not be shared with anyone other than yourself and the Michigan Nonprofit Association.
LaToya, before you move on, will you provide some examples of how someone might use after they've completed their assessment, how they might use their $10,000 for technical assistance?
Sure. So if your technical assistance assessment shows that you need support in fundraising, if you're wanting to develop that and improve that section of your organization, you may want to work with M&A or do the research on your own to identify an organization that can help you to develop a fundraising plan or a fundraising strategy that will work best for your organization. So you would be able to use your funds to possibly pay for fundraising support or things of that nature. For example, also if you need a human resources manual or human resources support, then you could possibly use the funds to support those type of infrastructure development within your organization. And that's really the focus of these funds, to help build the infrastructure support and system support within your organization. They wouldn't be used to develop programming or things like that, but really to improve your internal organizational structures. So again, who is eligible? 501c3 organizations, and if you have not currently received your 501c3 designation or you're currently working on that, fiscal sponsors are available. And as we said before with the leader grants, you are able to, we have identified 2 fiscal sponsors within the city who are prepared to be fiscal sponsors for organizations who receive these grants. And that is ULSA, as well as Lighthouse of Oakland County. And so you will just be able to list those folks' names in your application. And thirdly, if you have someone you're already working with who is your fiscal sponsor, that is okay. As we said, they just need to have financially reviewed financial reviews of their financials. So again, in order to be eligible, your organization must be headquartered in Pontiac, have an annual budget under $1.5 million, a minimum of 2-year program operation or delivery, and at least 1 full-time paid staff or equivalent, or 1 full-time volunteer or equivalent. So when we say this, we mean that could be a mix of part-time folks who are working part-time for part-time pay. That can be 2 or 3 folks, and however that adds up to a full-time person, as well as folks who may be volunteers part-time or some combination of that. And then a board of directors that is representative of the community, and a letter stating board approval for the organization's participation and your commitment to all components of the project. Technical assistance application. Again, this application is going to be fairly straightforward and is really going to want a narrative that discusses how your technical assistance and capacity areas could be supported by this grant, and where there are opportunities for growth in your organization. So that can be towards talent, operations, funding and resources, as we used in the example, organizational culture, strategy and planning, program development, management and evaluation, leadership, and governance. So again, if your organization is thinking about doing program evaluation and things of that nature, if that comes out in your assessment as something that you want to work more towards, then those are opportunities for growth there as well. And then your narrative should also discuss how will you address the challenges, how will addressing these challenges impact your work in Pontiac? And then how are you willing to take an organizational assessment to better understand your challenges? And then again, there are a few attachments that we ask, but if your organization is fiscally sponsored or working with a fiscal sponsor, these documents can be provided through your fiscal sponsor. So your 501c3 federal tax exemption letter, a list of board of directors or trustees, an optional annual report. And again, if your organization does not have an annual report, we're not asking you to go out and create one, but if you have one, it's a nice addition. As well as your organization's diversity policy, a certified financial auditor review, and an operating budget for the current fiscal year. And again, there is the last part around compliance. So at the end of the grant season of approximately a year or so, there will just need to be a final report discussing how your grant funds were utilized to benefit the growth and capacity of your organization. So that would be the focus of your grant report at the end of your grant. So I will turn it over to Denise to talk with you about the Flux system and how to apply.
Thank you. Before I move on, one other thing to note is, because we have gotten some questions on this, is just to say that you can apply for both grants. If you want to apply for professional development, you can do that. But if you feel like your organization may also be a good fit to go through the assessment and receive the organizational technical assistance dollars, most certainly apply for both. There's no guarantee that you would get both, but we do want to encourage you to think about how to apply for both grants. So let me walk you through the actual application and how this will work. So the Community Foundation uses an online grant portal called Flux. And the first and most important thing to know is that you have to register for the system. So I've just taken you to the registration page, and you can navigate to this from the Community Foundation's website. We will have included the link when we sent you this webinar, so hopefully you have it handy. The deadline to register is March 26th. And the reason for that is that it can take a few days to get you into the system. So we want to make sure that you are in the system and have enough time to complete your application before they are due on April 8th. So make sure that you get in and do this as soon as possible. This is something as an organization you only have to do one time. So if you come back and are applying for other grants through the Community Foundation, you will already be set up in their system. If you've received a grant from the Community Foundation in the past, I still encourage you to double check that you are registered. This is a relatively new system for them, so you may not be in there yet. So just to show you what the registration page looks like, you'll just kind of go through and answer the prompts. The first one asks if you are a 501c3 or a government entity or certified religious organization, and you'll just say yes or no. If the answer is no, this is how we, our first indicator that you will want to use a fiscal sponsor. Here, you can actually connect directly to GuideStar and look up your profile, which will auto-populate some of the information here. If you don't have your EIN or tax ID handy, this is a great way to just look that up quickly. You'll include your organization's legal name, as well as your doing business as name, if that is different from your legal name. And so just be sure not to skip over that piece. Again, your organization's EIN or tax ID number. If you're a 501c3 and you don't have one, you can enter zeros here, but it is a required field, as you can see by the red star, so you do have to put in something. The rest of this information here is just your organization's address, your main contact information, your website. You can include your social media profiles if you choose to, if you wish to, it's not required. Your organization's mission, and your contact info. So one thing to note here is that if you are applying for the grant, but you are not the organization's executive director or CEO, you will need to create a separate profile. You need to go through this registration for them as well, so that both contacts are in the system. Those two individuals would have a separate profile. And the reason for that is that the executive director or CEO is the person who's going to be signing any grant agreements should you be awarded one, and they'll need to have their contact info in the system. But if you are that person, then you only need to do this one time. Okay, so you'll go through and fill out your contact info and then submit the request. It can take up to 5 business days for this to be processed, so you will receive a confirmation email saying that your profile has been created and granting you access to it to set up a password and be able to log into the system. So don't be concerned if you don't see that email right away. It can take a few days to come through. Okay, so the next thing I want to walk you through is the grants portal itself. And so this is once you've registered and you've received your profile, you'll be able to log into the system. You can also access this from the Community Foundation's website. So this is kind of the home page of it. And the most important things I want to show you today are the organization, where it says My Organization. This is your organization's profile in the system. First thing that you want to do, this is just to double check that your information is correct. This should be auto-populated with everything that you entered when you registered in the system. And so as you kind of scroll down, you'll be able to see if something is not correct, you can just click the edit button up top here and change it. You can come back and do this at any time. If as you're filling out your application, you realize you're missing something here, you can go back and edit it. You just see there's an edit button up in the top right corner. And then when you're done editing, there's an update button down in the bottom right corner. So again, these would be auto-populated and there's sample text in here now. The organization user section, this is, as I mentioned earlier, if you need to have 2 individuals attached to your organization, associated with your organization, that would be the grantee, or perhaps if you're the grant writer, that would be you, and then your CEO would have a separate listing. And those, again, would be automatically associated with your organization. Here you can add the organization's mission, background, an explanation of programming. These sections are going to be auto-populated on your application itself. And so if you fill them out here, you never have to fill them out again. If you're applying for future grants, you can always come back and update it, but it does save you some time when you go to actually create your application. And the same is true for this section, the organization documents. So LaToya shared with you the attachments that are required as part of this grant. A number of those you're going to find here, and you can upload in this section, and they will be, again, attached to your application when you go and create it. So it's a good place to keep your organization's diversity policy, your annual report, perhaps your 990 or your certified audit, because those are documents that you're not going to update, more than once a year, and they can just sort of live here and be attached to your profile. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do when you're ready is go and apply for the grant. You can do that by clicking this blue box on the lower left corner. It's also up here in the menu. So those take you to the same place. So we'll click on that. On this page, you're going to scroll down. You will see there are multiple boxes that say apply. It's very important that you go to the initiative section. So you're going to apply for an initiative. And this is where the Pontiac Capacity Building grants are housed, for lack of a better word. So here's what the application looks like. And as you scroll down, you're going to come to this section that says select your application. And from this drop-down menu is a list of all the initiatives that exist at the foundation. So you want to make sure that you're on the right application. You can select either Pontiac Leaders or the Pontiac Organization, because they are two different applications. So we'll just look at the Leaders application here. They're very similar, but remember the questions and the attachments are a little bit different. So make sure that you read through all of this fine print, which will help you through the application. This first section, the organization information. So this is going to be automatically populated from your organization profile. This is the reason that it's important to make sure that the information there is correct. Okay, so this section will already be filled in for you. When you come here, the first thing to note is the primary applicant contact. That, again, is you as the grant writer. If you are the CEO, then you can select yourself. You do need to identify the primary signatory, and that should be your CEO, executive director, or president, which again may not be you, the person filling out the application. So make sure that you indicate who that is, and same for this third field, CEO, president, or executive director. It could be that all three of these are the same because you are that person, and that's fine. The next box here asks if you will be using a fiscal sponsor. If you say yes, then it opens up a few additional fields. If you are wanting to use either Lighthouse or the Oakland Livingston Human Services Agency, which is OLSA, just state that here, just list their name. If you are working with some other organization that you have already have a relationship with, just include this information that it asks for here, the contact, the person who will be the main point of contact, their legal name, and their tax ID and address if you have it.
Denise, do they have to contact OLSA or Lighthouse?
You do not. Because we've already established relationships with Lighthouse and OLSA, and they are already anticipating that they will serve as fiscal sponsors for some of the grantees in this program, you do not need to contact them. Just indicate that you are would like to work with one of them, or if you don't have a preference, you can state that as well. Scrolling below is just some basic project information. Give it a title. It doesn't have to be overly thought through, just something simple to identify your application. The dollar amount that you are requesting, and the start and end date. Now on this, I just want to say the typical grant period is 1 year. Grants are expected to be awarded in early May. So you can put your start date as sometime in May, early May 1st, and the end date as April 30th. But this can be flexible. And if you are applying for a leader grant, for example, and you know that some part of it is a training that takes place after April 30th of 2021, and it's going to extend out into June or something, that's okay. Just indicate it here, and it will be, I'm sure you would explain that in your narrative, and there's no difficulty there. So give a brief project summary. Again, just do your best to be concise. It's just a general overview. The narrative questions are here below. There on these, there's no word limit or maximum, but we do ask, we do recommend that you just be concise. Your grant reviewers will appreciate if it's just the most essential information that they need to know, and that it's kept concise. So these are the questions that Latoya reviewed that are listed in your guidelines. And you can type in here, you can copy and paste from another document. If you look down at the bottom of the page, there's a little spell check button that says ABC check. It's always good to remember to do that. And there's also a save button, and I encourage you to save frequently because it doesn't automatically save. And if you step away from the application, you'll get logged out of it and you will lose everything. So just be sure to save it frequently. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, even though I haven't written anything, but just so you can see how that works. And it will take just a moment. Great. So now it says that it's been updated and you have the option to submit and withdraw. And if I started typing again, that edit button would come back up. I'm sorry, that save button would come back up and I could make changes. So you just click edit here and then the save button reappears. So in the documents section, which is the last part of the application, this is where you're going to upload, in the case of the leader grant application, your supervisor's letter of approval is requested. You just click the little plus button and it pops out. You can drag and drop your file or click the add files button and it will direct you to locate the file on your hard drive. Once you have added a file, it'll populate underneath this box that says application documents, and it will give you the options to, if you need to change the file or update it, you can do that there. And below here where it says organization documents, these are the documents that you have already uploaded to your organization profile. You can also upload them directly here by clicking that plus button, or you can change any of these documents by using these little buttons off to the right. So as you can see, they have been automatically attached. Okay. Very last part is your financial information specific to the grant. This is your budget. So on the leader grant, you will have this. The organization grant application does not include this section because that grant is just for $10,000. You'll indicate that at the top. But in this case, you are applying for a range of $2,500 to $5,000 to cover the expenses of your professional development opportunity. And so this worksheet pops up when you click on the little plus here, and it will ask you to populate these fields with the information. What expenses you're going to have, including your travel, your lodging, what the cost of the actual, if it's a training or a conference, what that looks like. And so you'll populate it here. And you can include additional narrative details if something needs explanation. You'll save it, and then it's going to appear here at the, it would have, if I had actually put anything in it, it would have appeared here at the bottom of your, there we go, just took a minute, at the bottom of your application. Okay, and that's it. You'll hit submit, and you can include a note if you wish, and that is the application. So I won't walk through the organization grant application. It will look exactly the same except for the narrative questions are different and the attachments are different. And this message is coming up because I left some fields blank that were required. So this is the prompt that will tell you to go back and fix it. All right. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now. Okay. Okay, so important final note, almost final note, is that we have office hours available for you if you want to talk through your application, if you're not sure what you want to apply for, or if you qualify, if you need some help thinking through how best to think about the professional development opportunities that might be out there, or if you need help with the application itself, Latoya is available for you, and she can meet with you at the library, the Pontiac Public Library. We do have a link for you to sign up for office hours. It should be have been included in the email you received with this webinar, and is also on the website. So we encourage you to take advantage of those. She can really help you think through your application, and is going to be a great resource for you. Finally, the timeline. So applications are open now. The deadline to register in Flux, as I mentioned, is March 26th. So really want to make sure that you get on that. If you have questions as you do it, don't be afraid to reach out and let us know. The office hours with Latoya are March 9th, starting on March 9th, and will run through April 8th, which is also the deadline to apply. Your applications are due by 5 p.m. on April 8th, and I believe Latoya's last appointment is at 4:15 that day, so she can help you right down to the wire. There are no late applications. You do have to get them in by 5 p.m. or they will not be considered, and you will need to reapply next year. Award and decline notifications will be sent by email on May 8th, and announcement of the grants will be on May 18th. If you have any questions, you can contact us. Our email and phone numbers are here, and we are happy to help in any way we can.